On a quiet Monday night in the small town of Centerville, South Dakota, an unexpected tragedy unfolded, shattering the calm of this close-knit community. Jay Ostrem, a 64-year-old former law enforcement officer and once the mayor of Centerville, now stands accused of the cold-blooded murder of 3 men. This shocking event has left the town's fewer than 1,000 residents reeling, grappling with the reality that one of their own could commit such a heinous act. Ostrem's past paints a picture of a man deeply embedded in the fabric of law enforcement and local governance. With over 2 decades of experience in law enforcement spanning Wyoming and South Dakota, Ostrem had built a reputation as a steadfast public servant. About 15 years ago, he served as the mayor of Centerville, a role in which he was instrumental during turbulent times for the local police department. However, the precise dates of his tenure as mayor remain unclear. The events that led to Ostrem's arrest began to unravel at 9:44 p.m. on that fateful Monday night. A frantic call came into the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office dispatch center from a young man identifying himself as Zach Frankus. In a panicked voice, Zach reported that his brother, Paul Frankus, had been shot by a guy from across the street. As the call continued, Zach, still on the line, screamed that he too had been shot. The call abruptly ended, plunging the dispatcher and responding officers into a race against time. When authorities arrived at the scene, a South Dakota Game, Fish, and Parks officer spotted Ostrem leaving the Frankus residence. Despite initial commands to stop, Ostrem hesitated before eventually complying and lying down on the ground. He was promptly arrested, with officers noting he had an AR-style rifle near him and a handgun in his pocket. Additionally, Ostrem was bleeding from his left hand and reeked of alcohol. Inside the home, authorities discovered a horrifying sight: the lifeless bodies of Paul Frankus, 26, his younger brother Zach, 21, and Timothy Richmond, 35. The once peaceful residence had become a scene of carnage, with spent shotgun and rifle casings littering the floor. As the investigation unfolded, a disturbing motive began to emerge. Ostrem's wife, a British national, provided a crucial piece of the puzzle. She recounted an incident that had occurred just days prior, on May 23rd, when she and Paul Frankus had been drinking together. According to her, Paul had forcibly kissed her, exposed himself, and pressed against her. She disclosed this to Ostrem on the night of the shooting, triggering his violent outburst. Fueled by alcohol and rage, Ostrem had stormed out of the house, armed and determined to exact his own form of justice. Witnesses described the chaos that ensued as law enforcement swarmed the small town. Longtime resident Fred Holmberg expressed his disbelief, stating he was perplexed by the events. Another local, Mark Wheats, echoed the sentiment, saying, "Never in a million years would I have ever guessed anything like this would happen here." In the days that followed, more details about Ostrem's background came to light, painting a complex picture of a man who had once been a pillar of the community. Ostrem's law enforcement career was marked by notable incidents and controversies. He had helped Centerville navigate through scrutiny when the city's police chief faced investigation for an undisclosed crime in 2006. Ostrem stepped in to work for the city police department on weekends, a time when the town had little to no law enforcement presence. However, his involvement ceased after the former police chief, Nolan Clark, pleaded guilty to DUI in 2007. In 2010, Ostrem found himself entangled in a legal battle when the city's former police chief, Rachel Kopman, filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against him. Ostrem, who had already served as mayor by that time, was accused of inundating Kopman with sexually inappropriate comments. The lawsuit was eventually settled, but the details of the settlement remained undisclosed. Ostrem's law enforcement certification expired in 2016, and he seemingly retreated into a quieter life until the tragic events of that Monday night thrust him back into the spotlight. His arrest and the subsequent charges of 3 counts of first-degree murder have left Centerville in shock, struggling to reconcile the image of a dedicated public servant with that of a cold-blooded killer. Attorney General Marty Jackley addressed the media, stating, "Jay Ostrem has been arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, and law enforcement has secured the scene. There is no further threat to the public." He assured the community that a thorough investigation was underway, led by the South Dakota Division of Criminal Investigation, with support from various local law enforcement agencies. As Centerville grapples with this tragedy, the community's sense of security has been irrevocably shaken. The town, recently named the Community of the Year by the Governor's Office of Economic Development, now finds itself at the center of a grisly crime story that has drawn national attention. The legal proceedings are expected to be closely followed, not just by the residents of Centerville, but by the wider public eager to understand the full scope of what led a former lawman and mayor to commit such a horrific act. The arrest and pending trial of Jay Ostrem have left a dark cloud over Centerville, a town that now must come to terms with the violence that erupted within its borders. The loss of Paul and Zach Frankus and Timothy Richmond has deeply affected their families and friends, who must now navigate their grief in the wake of such senseless violence. As the investigation continues and more details come to light, Centerville will be left to pick up the pieces and seek some form of justice and closure for the victims of this tragic event. The story of Jay Ostrem, a former lawman and mayor who lost his mind and committed a heinous act of violence after his wife was disrespected, serves as a stark reminder of the unpredictable and often chaotic world we live in. Driven to a fit of rage upon hearing that his wife had been assaulted, Ostrem's actions underscore the necessity of staying vigilant and being acutely aware of our surroundings, as we can never truly know when or where danger might strike. His drastic transformation from a trusted community figure to a cold-blooded killer highlights the fragility of our sense of security and the importance of remaining alert in an ever-changing and unpredictable society. Rest in peace to brothers Paul and Zach Frankus and Timothy Richmond, taken from this world way too soon.